news for March 14th, 2025. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Happy Pi Day, Brett.
Oh,
3.14.
it is 314. Happy Pi Day. It's like, I don't know what we do to celebrate Happy Pi Day. Although people eat pie, right? I
Yes,
think
indeed.
we should
Have
have a
some
picture
pie.
of a pie. There. Well, while you're eating that pie, maybe just make sure that you update your phone and your Apple Watch. I don't know if there was an Apple Watch involved in this, but your iPad for sure. iOS 18.3.2, which seems like it wasn't that big of a deal for me, the update, but reading the story you linked to today, it patches a serious web browser bug. So make sure you get this update done today if you can.
The most dangerous bugs that are out there are these zero-day exploits. And zero-day
Right.
means it's not that it's going to be used by a bad guy one day in the future, 2 days in the future. It means it's being used by bad guys right now. And there was a security flaw in Safari that the bad guys could use to, access your system. This is actually something that Apple has fixed in the past. And this is sort of, I guess they didn't fix it completely, or they found another workaround to it. So when Apple figured it out, they immediately released this update this week. And again, hopefully none of us are going to get bitten by this one. But since this is not something theoretical, this is something that there are actually websites out there that the bad guys are using that will actually exploit it. There's no reason to risk it. And so pretty much every device that can run Safari, iPhone, iPad, your Mac, if it can run Safari, then it potentially is vulnerable to this bug. So, go ahead and update your device.
Yeah, I mentioned the Apple Watch, but I don't know that the Apple Watch is included in this.
I don't think so, and I don't think the Apple TV either. Yeah, because they don't have Safari. But yeah,
I saw it first on my Mac, and usually when I see one on the Mac, I'm usually pretty quick to make sure I get that updated. They don't do that quite as often as maybe some of the others. But then I immediately just turned to my phone and my iPad and made sure that those were updated. And again, this is not. It's not a major update like 18 to 19, and it's not even a major point update from 18.3 to 18.4. This is a point update, 18.3.2. So it doesn't take as long, and it's a good one to get up there as quickly as possible. However, we are anticipating 18.4, a pretty major point update. You linked to a story today just about the Apple TV that's going to have the update. And typically when this point update, all of the devices, right, have the update, and the Apple TV will get one as well in 18.4. Just a couple of nice user interface changes that you reported on today.
Yeah, I mean, the big story here is not this particular. I mean, these are just some interface changes to the TV app on the iPhone and the iPad. But the real story is we know every once in a while, Apple actually tells us when an update is coming, when we always know there's updates coming. We know that 18.4 is coming in April because Apple has announced it in the past, and the betas are out there. And so there's been, various articles where people have discussed some of the features. This is just, yet another one. And although there's nothing revolutionary about this, it's just a new interface that makes things look a bit cleaner. It's just interesting, some of the features of 18.4 that people are discussing, within the month. This will be the big update that we will all have, that will have some new features to it, unlike the security updates that you just talked about.
With 18.4, we were promised that we would supposed to get some new updates to Apple Intelligence, AI. And boy, Heidi, if you follow anything in the Apple-related news world, you may have seen some announcements from Apple this past week that they're putting a little bit of the brakes on some of that. And I don't know if that really affects 18.4 because that has been in beta for a while. But this was really even looking forward to some additional additional features we were anticipating over the next few months that they had even announced back last summer at the Worldwide Developers Conference. You linked to probably the two most important sources for this story this past week. John Gruber at Daring Fireball, he reported on the statement that came from Apple. And then a few days after that, he went into a lot of detail about what this actually means, even apologizing to readers because he felt like he should have seen some of these red flags ahead of time. Why don't you break it down for us a little bit, Jeff, and what's going on here?
Anytime that a company, Apple or otherwise, releases a statement on a Friday afternoon. It was a week ago, shortly after we recorded this podcast. You know that they're trying to sort of bury it and try to not get too much attention. And so you know it's not going to be good news. And that's what this is. Last summer, at WWDC, Apple, who had been perceived, I think correctly so, as being behind in the AI sphere compared to other companies, you know, Google, Amazon, everybody else. They knew that they were behind. It was probably causing a hit to their stock market and everything else, stock price. So they was like, we need to announce something. So they announced Apple Intelligence. And Apple Intelligence was just sort of the umbrella term that was used for a whole host of AI technologies. Some of them were the low-hanging fruit that everybody has been doing, things like summarization, you know, and any AI thing you can throw a stick at, they do summarization, and Apple announced that they could summarize emails, and that feature is now available. You know, we have that now. And it was really sort of ho-hum, but the ones that were most interesting to all of us were the ones where they could take unique advantage of the information that is on your iPhone that would normally be private to apps, but Apple knows about it because they have access to your iPhone, and do something interesting with it. So for example, they could look at your emails and the contents of your messages. They could look at your messages from your text messages. They could even look at what's ever being displayed on the screen, which means that another app, you know, any app, no matter how the app displays it, obviously is going to put stuff on the screen. And so if you think about it, if there was some AI agent that had access to everything that possibly is shown on your iPhone or iPad, that would be a lot of information. And they could then use that information to be helpful to you. It sounds pretty promising. Of course, it's a little scary because of the information it has access to, but Apple, you know, has built up a reputation for being more privacy focused than other companies. And so a lot of us were thinking, me included, well, great, this is the one company I can trust from a privacy standpoint, and they're going to use my information in a way that's safe, but is helpful to me. And it culminated in a commercial that they released last September that I linked to. It starred Bella Ramsey, who is an actress that's known from Game of Thrones, and she was also one of the stars of The Last of Us, which was a great show on HBO. And so they hired a well-known actress. I'm sure they paid big bucks, and she had this great example of, you know, she's in a crowded room and she sees someone and she's like, oh, who is that? And she asks her phone, and because the phone, you know, oh, that's so and so, you had lunch with him at such and such and you discussed this. And you know, wouldn't we all love to have an AI assistant that could sort of be our second brain? Or another example that Apple discussed, that was a commercial that Apple actually ran on like football games and stuff. And another one was one that they actually announced where they could say, you know, hey, you know who, when is my mom's flight landing? And it could know from your phone that, oh, okay, well, you know, your mom sent you a text message and here's the flight info, and I know how to search for flight stuff online. And so if it's been delayed an hour, so it can put all that together and give it to you. This is truly helpful AI stuff. It's also apparently stuff that was sort of vaporware, because as John Gruber points out in that second article, when Apple announced all of this stuff, there were some things that Apple previewed to reporters, you know, like here, you know, we're not going to let you do it, but you can watch us do it on our device because it's still, you know, being worked out. But these features, the ones that were the most interesting, they just like, they had these they weren't demos. They had like, you know, hiring actors to do videos, but they were all completely mock-ups. They weren't anything, you know, they never showed us, here is a beta version of it. And as John Gruber is saying now, he's kicking himself because why didn't he inquire back then of, wait a minute, why aren't you actually showing me? I know it would be an early beta, but why aren't you actually showing it to me? And so sure enough, that was the announcement that Apple made last Friday, is they said that those, you know, more personal aspects of Siri, they're not going to be part of you know, the current operating system that may have been announced in 18.4 next month, but instead it's going to come out in the coming year. And what does the coming year even mean?
Right. They say it's going to take us longer than we thought to deliver on these features, and we anticipate rolling them out in the coming year.
And does the coming year, does that even mean calendar year 2025? Does that mean 2026? I literally don't know. And I'm not being silly about it. Apple chose those words carefully, I think, to be intentionally vague. Now, look, let me just pause for a second and say, all of us, no matter what you do in life, we have all been involved in a project that once you get into it, you realize it's more complicated than you thought. It's going to take longer than you thought. Look, I get it. We've all been there before. Having said that, Apple has a reputation that's been built up over time for being, they they don't announce products until they're ready. This is the thing. Many companies, especially in the tech sphere, they like to sort of say, this is our concept car. This is what we plan to do.
Right.
And they eventually get there. And Apple of old used to do it. I mean, you go back in time into the 1980s, 1990s, there was a famous Apple video that they released called the Knowledge Navigator. And it was a complete mock-up. It was just, and it was a guy that's talking to something that sort of looks like an iPad. And there's a little person on it that's talking to you, sort of like a really sophisticated Siri. And we all watched it and we're like, wow, wouldn't that be a cool future? But Apple was just this is aspirational at best. And of course, they've never, 20, 30 years later, given us anything that's even close to that. And so, although it might be fun to see concept videos, it's not very useful if it's not something you can actually make. And so that's what's frustrating here is Apple for the last couple, ever since Steve Jobs came back in the 90s, they've been pretty good at not announcing stuff unless it was truly ready. And this is the first time, and it's a big one. I mean, the AI is a huge deal in the tech sphere. And on a topic that's this important, they announced something that really wasn't going to be ready. And we don't know if it's going to be ready. So why is Apple taking so long? Is it because they can't make it work because it's so complicated? Maybe. There was a speculation by Federico Viticci of MasStories this week that it could be because of the security implications of it. Because as I just said before, giving Siri access to everything on your device, that it could in theory maybe exposed to other apps, and then they could do who knows what with it. I mean, these are serious security concerns. As a lawyer right now, I'm constantly looking at AI solutions for my law firm, and I want them to be helpful, but I'm also incredibly sensitive about making sure that they are safe. That they are really not, do not want to have any security risks. So I understand this is a tough problem for Apple, but by previewing something that they were not ready to preview, and by taking advantage of the trust that we all have that Apple doesn't announce something unless they're really ready, I think this is a real black eye for Apple. It means that in the future, if Apple tells us they're going to do something, we now need to say, are you really saying that you're going to do this? Or is this just what you'd like to do, but you don't know if you actually can do it? It's a big story.
What do you think? And I'm trying to see here what Gruber's position. Should they have not said anything at all last summer about this, Jeff? I mean, he calls it, like you alluded to this. It's like what they showed last summer, Gruber says, was not a demo. It was a concept video.
Yeah.
And he says those are actually BS. It's a sign of a company in disarray, if not crisis. I don't know if I would go that far, but I am not John Gruber, and he has a lot more insight into a lot of things going on there. But it's like, did they make the right decision by announcing it? Like you said, they were seen as being behind the ball on this. They had to get something out. We thought that this was good, and I thought they did a good job, to be honest with you, of saying, hey, we're going to roll this out incrementally, right? We're going to do a little bit at a time. And I liked that. I thought, well, that's a good Apple-esque approach to it. We're not going to throw everything out there and then have issues. We're going to do little things at a time. And maybe they still are on some kind of a trajectory like that. They only know, of course, and we don't. But it's, I'm trying to see, like, what was John Gruber's point here? Should they have not said anything at all? Or should they have just waited maybe for a little bit? And then at the risk of being seen as more behind the ball, right? More behind everything.
Yeah. I mean, his position is they shouldn't have announced it in the first place. And second of all, by previewing it, reporters like him and others that actually have direct access to Apple, unlike you or me, they should have pushed back on it and said, is this actually real? Or is this just something that you think it would be nice if you could possibly do it one day? And that's the thing. I don't have a problem with Apple at WWDC, which is when they preview the next operating system. Usually the operating system comes out in September for the iPhone and the iPad. I think it's okay for them to say, here's the features coming in September. And then we have even more that are not going to be ready in September, but they are coming afterwards. And they've been doing that for many years now. And I do think it's fair. But there's a point at which something that it's far enough in the beta stage that they feel confident it's going to come out, even if it's not going to come out for a few more months. And then there's a point at which it's so aspirational that why are you even announcing this? And I know the answer. We all know the answer. Apple, rightfully so, was perceived as being behind in AI.
Right.
And so they wanted to have the, whether you talk about the stock market push or just public perception, they wanted people to think, oh, Apple is in this AI game as much as everybody else. And so as a result, they announced
Right.
something, but they announced something that that was a little unfair because it made it seem like, all of these other things that they announced, like
Yeah.
summarizing your emails and stuff like that, that
Hmm.
stuff was pretty ready to go. And so people looked at all of it and said, oh, okay, well, I presume that all of this is going to be really coming. And they got the advantage of this in the public perception in 2025 and in 2024, excuse me. And now they're hoping to bury, by releasing it on a Friday afternoon, the admission that, hey, we're not quite going to be able to do this. So,
Yeah.
now I will say this, a year from now, when you and I were talking on Pi Day of 2026,
Okay.
maybe by then this will have actually been released, and we'll say, well, okay, it took them longer. Once they realized that they fessed up, whatever, all is forgiven
Right.
now. We'll see. But I think it's also possible, Brett, that they might never be able to do some of the things they promised. In which case,
Right.
that's
Well, yeah.
unfair. It made me uncomfortable. I don't know how you felt about this. When I enjoyed watching that Bella Ramsey video because it was a fun video and it was the most compelling of any of those Apple Intelligence videos, but it made me uncomfortable because at the time I was watching it, I was thinking, this is a commercial that they're running on TV. Like,
Yeah.
my parents are watching this, or my brother, people that aren't really tech people, and people are going to look at this and think, oh, okay, I should go buy an iPhone right now to do this. But
Right.
they were
Right.
advertising something that was not ready yet. And I'm like, is
Yeah.
that fair?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that a little bit of a bait and switch to be showing somebody something that doesn't
Well,
actually exist?
the switch has happened already because Mark Gruber reported on March 7th about this announcement, and March 8th they pulled that commercial from YouTube. You know
Sure.
how
Well, I
Apple
guess they
has
had
the
to.
YouTube
Yeah.
channel. I know. And so to me, that's the switch there. It's like officially, I mean, you could probably still find it because I'm sure many people, republish it or whatever. But like from the Apple official YouTube channel, apparently it's not available anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and they had to now that they've pulled it. So I think it was a little unfair that they probably got people to buy an iPhone. Who knows how many, but some percentage probably did on the promise of a feature that
Yeah.
now they're not going to be able to deliver in this iOS cycle. It's certainly not going to come out between now and June. Maybe it will be in next year's iOS cycle.
Yeah.
We just don't know. So it's a very embarrassing moment for Apple. And again, we should not be surprised because everything about this AI sphere, as transformative it is, I mean, AI
Mm-hmm.
is as important to technology as many years ago, mobile was important to technology when Apple came out with the iPhone. And
Right.
you can look back in history because you and I have been doing technology, for so many years now, and you can find like these were the big things, the personal computer when it came out in the 1970s and 1980s, that was transformative. You can find the idea of a cell phone was you can find these things that were
Yeah.
transformative. And I have no doubt, I truly believe that AI is one of them. We are living through a
Yes.
transformative
Agreed.
change as we speak. But it's also, there's a lot of things that aren't working. There's the AI has hallucinations. It makes mistakes. It says things with
Right.
confidence that are absolutely false. And we need to learn to deal with that. It accesses information that you don't intend. And the next thing you know, it's exposing your personal data. It's a very difficult thing to do right. So I'm sure that's why Apple is taking more time with this. I feel with them. But to get back to the Gruber thing, don't overpromise if you can't deliver.
Right.
And,
Right.
so
For what it's worth, I'll just say similar along the lines of the security components that Frederico was talking about here. I oversimplify it as a control issue. I feel like the things that we've seen already from the Apple Intelligence that they can do, like the notes summary, they can do like the email. Those are things that they already have control over, right? That's one of the reasons that Apple makes hardware. They have so much more control over everything. But when you start asking questions of like, when is my mom's flight landing? Like, that's not just in one place. You've already alluded to this a little bit, Jeff. Like, you got to look at a flight app because there's might be updates. You might be look at the email that she sent or the text messages that mom sent. That maybe some of that would be under Apple's control. But some of these other app related things that you're having to look around in, that's a lot more complicated because again, to be honest with you, I think all of this is even possible right now. We know a lot of the stuff that Apple promised is possible from other apps, but if you do that with other systems, other ecosystems, I know Leo, for example, over at Leo Laporte over at Mac Break Weekly. He's been wearing, I forget what he called it. It was some kind of a system that he's been wearing that just records everything throughout his entire life, as he's going through his day. But at the end, it'll give him an AI summary. But he knows, because he's Leo Laporte, he's given away everything from like a privacy perspective, right? And Apple isn't not willing to do that right now because of what you said from the very beginning. They just have a lot of these privacy guardrails in place. I think a lot of this is possible, but the hard part is, well, how can Apple get access to this flight app but keep the information private as to why they need it, or that kind of thing? That to me is so many layers of just convoluted overwhelm on how this could actually work.
Yeah, my guess is they have something in their lab right now that does work some of the time, but my guess is that it doesn't work 100% reliably, and my guess is also that it has some privacy concerns that they are trying to figure out how to tap down. And again, that's just my guess. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe it's both of those. Maybe it's something else completely. Who knows? But that's, so it'll be now, Apple has the black eye of announcing something that they had to pull back. And now the question is, how long is it going to take before they do release this? And in the future, when Apple makes announcements, can we trust them? And just one more thing on this, one thing that happened in COVID, Brett, is it used to be that when Apple had announcements, they would have live presentations on stage, and people would have demos, and there's always the question of, is the demo going to work? It's a little sit on the edge of your chair. In COVID, they stopped doing those live things, and they went towards these very slick video productions, which I do like because they're very nice and they're professional, and obviously you can make everything just perfect. But because they are pre-produced and packaged, you do wonder, are you showing me something that's real, or did you mock up this video to be what you think it's going to be? And so this is now going to be, I don't want to overestimate this too much, but this is such a mistake by Apple that the next time that Apple releases a video for who knows what announcement, a part of me is going to wonder, okay, that was pretty cool, but like, did it really do that? Or did you just mock that up and make it look like it? And maybe you cut out the part in the middle where it didn't work. And so there's going to be some, trust but verify, it's going to have some implications.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay. Well, thanks for breaking that down for us and explaining. Definitely, not only will we be watching this, there'll be a lot of other people that will be watching this as well. And frankly, anytime that Apple comes out with any announcements or commercials, just like you're saying, there'll be a little bit of potential skepticism there until they can show what they're doing. So let's switch to another story you mentioned where we do see Apple Intelligence actually working. This is a little, I was going to use this as a tip one day, but you beat me to it here. The powerful Apple Notes feature, so this is an Apple Notes in your iPhone or your Mac or your iPad, has made note-taking even easier. And so what it's doing, you can record audio inside the Apple Notes app, and it will immediately give you a transcription of the audio recording. I've done this a couple of times, Jeff, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, I actually haven't done it yet, but I know it exists, and Ryan Christoffel describes it in this detail here. You can record audio. That part makes sense. You can record audio. You can use these AI engines to create pretty good transcripts of it. And again, I know that works because when we record this podcast every week, in fact, you're the one that does it behind the scenes, Brett. I'm curious, but like you have a transcript that's associated with all of our podcasts, and I think it's available on things like the Apple Podcasts app. In fact, I'm a little behind the scenes here. How do you create those? What do you use to create those transcripts?
So we've been doing that for a little over a year, right? So this was even before we sort of had these Apple Intelligence features, but in a similar fashion, I am using an app called Mac Whisper. In fact, let me see if I can.
Yeah. Whisper is one of the technologies I hear about all the time. Yeah,
and it's somebody just took that open, content or the technology there, and they pulled it into this. Yeah, here it is. It's on Gumroad, Mac Whisper, and it's a Mac native app. And I think I only paid maybe $10 or so to get the professional version there. But it is fantastic. And it does a really, really great job. I don't know if anybody gives us some feedback on some of that. I don't read all the transcripts every week. But, just knowing like proper names or things like that, like it really does a really good job of finding those all the time.
Yeah.
And that's not based on Apple Intelligence. It's based on that Whisper back end, right?
But it's still, it's AI. Yeah, it's a form of AI.
Is.
And what's nice is that So we have transcripts of our podcast, which means I've had times in the past where I'm like, when did we talk about it or what did we say? That's now
Right.
searchable because you can see them on the inthenewspodcast.com website and stuff. Again, I'm not trying to do self promotion, but my point is just that AI to transcribe audio is pretty robust. I mean, this is an AI technology that works pretty well. And so as Ryan Christoffel points out in this article, you can use that right on your device to record audio in the Notes app, create a transcript of it, and then if you want, you could even create a summary of it, which, part of me thinks about like, if I was a student, nowadays in college, just have your iPhone sit in class, make a transcript of everything the teacher says,
Exactly.
create a summary. I don't even have to be in class. I could just send my iPhone to class and then afterwards tell my iPhone to summarize it for myself. Give me a summary of what they talked about in the physics class today. So it's just sort of funny. So, but it's nice that we all have this technology if it's something that would make sense for your life to do it in the Notes app. And it's not just Notes. I mean, the other story I linked to is that Microsoft Word has similar abilities. So again, this is one of those AI features that's real. I mean, don't get me wrong.
It's on there. It's available
magic
right now.
Yeah, it's available
right.
today. I still think it's like magic because it wasn't that many years ago that you had to use expensive software like Dragon, Naturally Speaking and stuff to do transcriptions. Now we all have this ability right there on an iPhone, and it's pretty cool.
Well, and I think there's a way you can even do this. Like, even if you're on a phone call and you want to record the phone call, you could. There might be a built-in way to do audio
Yeah, I think that
transcription
is.
on a phone. And to me, I think this is using that same technology. Or you could open up your Notes app while you're on a phone call, use this recording technology, and it'll give you a real-time transcript of the phone call right there, which again, that is all based on what is already available in Apple Intelligence. I mean, it's based on AI, but it's basically Apple's whatever AI tool or platform or model that they're using in the back end. That's what's using, but that is based on Apple Intelligence. That is a piece that is available already today. And it works really well. Like I said, I've used it a couple of times, and it's like, just keep that in the back of your mind. If you ever need, just as you're recording something or you're having a meeting and you get hopefully permission to record while you're doing that, but it'll give you a real-time transcript, which is good. You already alluded to this. You can then search that transcript. Like, you can search the text as opposed to having to where did we talk about that and listen to it? You can search that in the actual text aspect, which to me is really, really helpful on that. And then along those lines, you link to another story about doing some of the same kind of work in Microsoft Word. This is the Word mobile app that we're talking about on the iPhone or even the Android. You can transcribe your speech in real time inside the Word app.
Yeah, same idea. So it's cool and useful technology. Yeah.
Like that. Let's go to maybe something a little more fun. You had a link to a story from Jason Snell. Let me see if I can pop it here. This is a weather app. Now, we've already talked about weather apps, Carrot Weather you like. I just have really enjoyed the basic app that comes for free on the phone, especially after they acquired Dark Sky so long ago. I think it's gotten much better. But I like this little Mercury weather app that Jason Snell talked about because I do this when I go on a trip. I have to switch back and forth between all the different locations that I plan on going to see what the forecast is going to be. But he did a great job looking at this Mercury app to do the same thing.
I've talked about apps that do this before. Like there was one I had reviews a while ago called Weather on the Go. But the idea is that
for car trip. Yeah, I remember.
Exactly, for a car trip. The idea is that when you want a weather forecast, if I'm sitting here in New Orleans and I want to know the forecast, I want to know what's going to be like in New Orleans for the next week. But if I'm going to be in Atlanta on Tuesday, in Chicago on Wednesday, in New York on Thursday, my forecast, I actually want to know in those days what's the weather going to be like so I can pack accordingly. And so Mercury Weather is just, one of many, many weather apps available for the iPhone, but it has a feature that Jason Snell says works really well where you can tell it where you're going to be on which day. And so when it shows your forecast, whether it's in the app or even just in a widget on your phone, it will actually show you the forecast based upon where you're going to be. And so if you do a lot of travel, in fact, Brett Bernie, you do a lot of travel. I know. Big part of your business. You do a lot more travel than I do. That these sorts of apps could be useful for planning your trips.
Yeah. When he was explaining this, which I also found interesting, by the way, he's wanted this for so long, and because he hates having to jump back and forth, he said, I built a convoluted shortcut for my New Zealand trip that queried Apple Weather for forecast from a manual itinerary. He had a little screenshot here where he could tap that little Apple shortcut. But, he pays, it's not bad. It's $3 a month, $15 a year, or $50 for a lifetime purchase. He's like, I bought Mercury Weather just for this feature that'll show you where you're going if you put an itinerary in. I just thought that was really cool. Thanks, Jason, for giving us another update. Now I got to spend more money on more weather, but it's important to know. Let's go to the Apple Watch. This was a fantastic little article you linked to today from Fernando Silva, who I've really enjoyed watching him grow and mature, like from the journalistic standpoint. He used to start off, he was very young doing videos, but this is 10 Apple Watch features that he uses every day, and you could too. There's a video that goes along with it, but I just skimmed through the little section titles here, and this is great.
Yeah, it was great because this was one of these articles that I looked at, and everyone that he listed, I'm like, oh yeah, that is a great feature. And so just to very quickly go through them, the first one is unlocking your Mac with the Apple Watch. I definitely use that one. You can sit down at your computer, and because you're wearing your Apple Watch, it knows it's you, and so you don't have to type in your password. That's nice. The next one is using the Apple Watch as a camera remote. I absolutely use this. There are times that I will I want to take a picture of me and the rest of the family. I'll set my iPhone up somewhere. I have a tripod I'll sometimes use, but then you get in the picture yourself and you're ready to take the picture. So I use the remote app on the Apple Watch. I press a button, it does a countdown, the flash, flashes 3 times on the iPhone, and you take the picture, and then you can just, use the app again to take another one. So that's an awesome feature. Ping my iPhone. I'm sure we've all done this before.
Absolutely.
You can't find your iPhone, you ping it. And what's really nice is that the watch, much like, it can show you how close you are and stuff like that. I was using this one the other day, Brett. This was 2 nights ago. I could not find my AirPod Pro case. I knew I left it somewhere in my house. I'm like, where is it? Where is it? And so in this case, I used my iPhone, not my Apple Watch. But I'm and I did that little thing where you're moving around and it says, I don't know where it is, keep moving. And so I go to the next room and it says, okay, now it's within 30 feet. Now it's within 20 feet. And then sure enough, when I found it, I'm like, oh, of course.
You're getting warmer. You're getting warmer.
It was stuck in a pocket in a pair of shorts that I had. But it's very useful to find it, because otherwise I would have never found it. It would have gone in the laundry. So I love that feature. The Apple TV Remote app, which is nice for controlling your Apple TV. Yes. He talks about the alarms. I mean, this is one of my... I love this because what's nice about it is when, you say, wake me up at 6 o'clock or whatever time you want to wake up, instead of making noise, it can make noise if you want, but it can just tap you, which is what I really like. So that way, especially if you, are sharing your bed with your partner or something like that, you're not going to necessarily wake them up because it's just tapping on your arm. And I will sometimes do this, if it's very important for me to wake up the next day, I've got a court hearing or something, I will set my iPhone alarm and maybe my Apple Watch alarm too, a couple minutes apart. I just want to really make sure I get up. Totally useful feature, very, very much like it. His next one is, he says he uses it to unlock his Tesla. Well, I don't have a Tesla and I'm not going to get into Teslas, but I wish one day I could unlock my car with it. Screenshots, that one's a little more esoteric. The next one, unlocking your iPhone with your Apple Watch. We talked about unlocking your Mac. But now you might say, why would you want to unlock your iPhone with your Apple Watch instead of just looking at your phone and using using Face ID? I'll tell you how I use this one, Brett. When and again, not everybody has a Vision Pro, but when I'm wearing my Vision Pro, okay, I might be doing something in my Vision Pro, and then I want to look at my iPhone real quick. But my iPhone is locked, right? And I can't look at my iPhone to unlock it because I'm wearing a Vision Pro in my face, and I don't have Touch ID on my phone, so I can't unlock it. So what I do instead is I lift my Apple Watch, so it turns on, because normally your Apple Watch is sort of in its standby mode. So I lift it so that it becomes bright and it turns on, and then once I do that, I can then go to my phone and just swipe up to unlock it. And even if it doesn't see my face for Face ID because I'm covered up by the crazy Apple Vision Pro goggles, it will still unlock it. So if you have a similar thing, maybe it's wintertime and you're wearing a ski mask or something like that, and so you can't use Face ID, you can, if you're wearing your watch, you can use your watch to unlock your iPhone, and it's a totally useful feature. Good. And so anyway, I'm not going to everything. I mean, he's got other usefuls here too, but this is just chock full. Every one of that is like good a tip of the week, as far as I'm concerned. They are all great tips.
Agreed. And that's when he mentioned that good morning and alarm features. That it works in conjunction with what do they call that? It's not your sleep tracking, but you can have a sleep timer. Does he say that's in here? Oh, sleep focus mode. So in other words, you can set a time when the sleep focus mode comes on in the evening. I think mine's at 10 p.m. And then that alarm will go off at 6:30 a.m. Now I've got mine set for a little bit earlier. I think I've got like 4 a.m. or so. And it's great because I know, but for me it works out. But here's the thing I was just going to point out there. It does it every day, right? I mean, you can schedule it if you wanted to try a different schedule, but if there's a day that you want to sleep in, the only things are that I forget to go in on my Apple Watch because that's where I control it. And if you go to that alarm for the sleep focus mode, you can say skip for tomorrow or skip for tonight. So in other words, it'll stay in the sleep focus mode, but it just won't do the alarm that next day. And I'd rather do that than have to go in and like reset, the days and the schedule and everything. But I'm so glad he talked about that because exactly like you, Jeff, I have that in my Apple Watch and it's so nice. It's almost just like the nicest person comes in and just like tap, 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 like, hey, excuse me, it's time to wake up. And it's like, I just feel a little bit better in doing that as opposed to like, the alarm blaring out. But I'll do the same thing. Sometimes I'll set an extra iPhone alarm just to make sure if I got to get up, which is funny. You mentioned the Apple Vision Pro, which I just thought that's a great application of that because I don't use my Apple Watch to unlock my phone. I remember when it first came out, but that's a great application. And maybe you unlocked your iPhone that way while you were watching Metallica on your Vision Pro, an immersive concert film from Apple. And this was the first time maybe I've ever heard you, my friend, talk about heavy metal. But now I want to watch this. I'm a Metallica fan. That's great. And it's like to be on stage with them is great.
This was awesome. Okay, I will tell you, there are fortunately, a number of ways that you can use the Apple Vision Pro to see music. When Apple first released the Vision Pro, they had a video with Alicia Keys where she was in her private, her recording studio, and they had cameras pointed throughout it. And it was so cool because when you're wearing the Vision Pro, it's 3D. It's like it's immersive. It's real life. You feel like you're sitting there in the recording studio with her, watching her record. She's so close to the camera. It's like she's right there in front of you. And Apple has released other music things over time, and third parties have too. I talked about one of them the other day. I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was like this bluegrass band that was so great because you could watch their little concert and you really feel like you're there. And that's awesome. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I want more of that stuff. But what's really cool is watching a live concert because you know what a live concert's like. The fans are there. It's loud. It's exciting and everything else. And so Metallica was touring last year, and the final stop of their tour was in Mexico City, and Apple pulled out all the stops. I mean, this was amazing. Wow. They had cameras that were right there in the front row of the audience. And this is sort of a surround stage. So there's audience all around the stage. So you have that ticket that you would spend thousands and thousands of dollars for to get a front row ticket for a big band like Metallica. You're there and you can stand up, but it's better than that. I mean, that's just the beginning. They also had cameras on stage. Like, for example, they had a camera that was permanently mounted right next to the drummer of Metallica, who I'm forgetting his name is Lars something or other. Exactly.
Come on, you gotta know Lars, Jeff.
Sorry. And so the camera's right there. And so he's amazing. Like when he plays the drum, he's great. Like doing things with his face and sticking his tongue out and making faces. Like it's so fun to watch. It's an adrenaline rush. It really is. And so you're right there next to him, and it's 3D. It's immersive. It's as if you're sitting on stage. And this is like, you couldn't even buy this ticket. There's no ticket you can buy to say, you know what, I'd like to sit on stage next to Lars while in a Metallica. Of course you can't buy that. And plus everybody else in the band too, they have, some of them are fixed cameras and some of them must be like steady cams that people were holding, but you're right next to the band on stage. Plus, they had like overhead shots, which we've seen before for concerts, but it was really cool to be 3D overhead shots. It was a little bit more immersive. And then they had other camera people that were, and these must have been steady cams that were handheld. They were like right there in the audience. And so while you're listening to the band, these people would put their faces like right into the camera, and it's a Metallica concert. So they're doing the gesture with their hands, whatever the devil horns, whatever you call it. And like there's the whole thing, like it is so immersive. And again, as I put in my post, I'm not even a big fan of Metallica. Heavy metal was never something I was into. I mean, Enter Sandman is a classic song, one of the best rock songs of all time. That one, of course, we all love. That opening riff is amazing. But after watching these 3 songs in the concert, and there's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff too, not too much, but you get to see a little bit of the band members off stage as well. I had so much fun watching it. It was just an incredible, like I said, adrenaline rush. And this is for a band that I'm not even the biggest fan of. So like if they
Right.
did this for bands that I really love, I mean, goodness, if they had like a Taylor Swift concert or something like this, immersive like this, get out of town. Everybody is going
That's
to go. People are
great.
already spending thousands of tickets on Taylor Swift concerts. You, my friend Brett, were one of them because I know that you managed to get tickets for
Uh-huh.
your family.
Yep.
Maybe not thousands, but you did spend a
Nope.
pretty
But
penny.
we still
You know,
did. Yep.
if you told people spend $4,000 on an Apple Vision Pro and you have the best Taylor Swift or pick your other artists of the day, your best whatever concert, I think people
Yeah.
would say, yeah, like maybe I would do that. So I am here to say
Wow.
that
Okay.
this
Okay.
was really, really good, and we need more of this. And I love that Apple put out all the stops on this, and I want to see more concerts like this. People will get a Vision Pro or something like it for something like live sports because it's so incredible. But a
Sure.
really good concert like this, I really think this is something that's like this is amazing. So I encourage you, if you have an opportunity, I know you can go to an Apple store and they will let you try out a Vision Pro. I don't know. I mean, this video just came out like a couple
Right.
hours ago. I don't know if they'll let you watch part of this video in an Apple store, but you might want to ask. It's really, really incredible. Incredibly immersive and just a lot of fun. It's a 25-minute video. It's one of the longer. I mean, there's really not a lot of immersive content that's that long. Apple had that movie that came out, the submarine movie a few months ago.
Right.
Most of the Apple immersive video content is like 10 minutes or less. But this is something I put it on last night because I just wanted to see it, as I was finishing up my post. And like I did not move. And like by the end of it, I'm glad that everybody else in my house was asleep because this was after
You're
midnight
headbanging a
because
little bit
because
toward the
I
end.
was like seriously into it. It was really, really good. So, oh, incredible.
Well, you may not even have to go to an Apple store to see the Metallica band. This is another store you lead to, and I get why they're doing it, but it's just so funny. You can maybe test out an Apple Vision Pro at your local Lowe's store. Yes, you heard that right. Lowe's, as in the hardware store. Go to your local. I mean, there's only a few of these
Yeah.
locations, I think, in Texas, maybe a couple in California, and they're doing it again mostly from like, here's how you design your kitchen and whatever else. But I'd love for somebody to tell us, ask them if you can watch Metallica when you're in Lowe's. I think that would
Ha
be
ha
even
ha
more
ha.
fun.
That's funny. Apple did this last year once, I think at a single Lowe's location. And I saw this week, as you're saying,
That's
that there's a
right.
couple stores in like the Austin, Texas area and stuff like that. And it makes sense because you can see sort of a 3D version of a kitchen. And I haven't done this myself, but I imagine you can say, what would it look like if I had this appliance? And what would it look like if I
Right.
had this covering, this coloring, this finish? And so, and it's very realistic. So why not do it? But it's just funny that, a Lowe's of all the places you could go to try out an Apple Vision Pro, Lowe's is one of them.
Have you see your new kitchen and have Metallica play in the kitchen. I mean, that would really be something special if you could do that. Hey, just real quick, we talked about this a little bit last week, just to let people know, in 3 weeks from today, you and I both are going to be in Chicago because we are going to be speaking at the American Bar Association Tech Show. This is an annual conference that they have, obviously focused on technology, mostly for the legal profession, although we sometimes talk about all kinds of things. You're going to be talking about the Apple Vision Pro, along with a good friend of ours, Kenton Bryce from the University of Oklahoma School of Law. You're going to be talking about augmented reality and using that within the practice of law. And then both of us are going to be talking about using iPhones and iPads. I'm going to be talking about using an iPad in trial. You're going to be talking about productivity apps for the iPhone and iPad. And then just last but not least, you and I are going to be hosting a dinner. I think there's only going to be a slot for like 9 other people to come with us on that Thursday night. So this is April 2nd through the 5th. So we're actually going to be there on April 4th, Friday, April 4th, and we're hoping that we're going to record an episode of this podcast. So if you're around, be sure to come by and say hello to us. That's going to be in Chicago, the ABA Tech Show, April 2nd through 5th. So April 4th, Friday, April 4th, we'll be there live, and we're planning to record an episode of this podcast, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait.
Yeah, very good. In the show, let's talk about this
In the
quick a bit.
show.
You had a quick little piece here talking about the upcoming shows. I remember when we were talking about this, about like Severance, or even I remember Bad Monkey, several other Wolves, for example. That was a movie which I have all watched now. And it's just cool to see this now, like what's coming up, because I get it. The anticipation is just so beautiful these days about what could be coming to Apple TV Plus.
This headline, I think, is so accurate. Another Ryan Christoffel article, Apple TV
Yeah.
Plus, it's HBO strategy. And this is, and we've mentioned this before. This is what it is. We all know that in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, HBO was known as a place that really had good quality shows. And
Oh
I think
yes.
they've lost
Yeah.
they still have some decent shows. I'm watching White Lotus
Yeah.
right now
Yeah.
and it's fun.
The Last
But
of Us is good.
but they've
Yeah.
lost
Yeah.
Last of Us, of course. But I think that it's no longer the unique marquee place. It used to be like if you were the big, good show, it was going to be an HBO. And Apple TV Plus is now doing it. Apple TV Plus is very different from Netflix. Netflix has
Mm,
10,000 shows, and there were some good
yeah.
ones,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of clunkers too. Apple TV Plus focuses on quality, not quantity, like HBO's used to try to do, and just have good stuff. And it's not that every show is good. Some are better than others for sure, but they've had some that are truly amazing. And Severance, of course, is the perfect example of it, but so many more that we've talked about, Ted Lasso and a million others. So in Christoffel, he talks about some of the shows coming out in just the next few months that have the potential to be really good. Dope Thief is actually already started. I haven't started watching it yet, but I've seen
Yeah.
some good things about it. The Studio, which is starring what's his name? I'm forgetting the lead guy's name. I will come to me in a second.
I'm trying
But
to see if it's even mentioned here. I don't see the
the
studio.
the early buzz for this show, The Studio, it's supposed to be really good. It's like it's a fake story about a studio executive, and so it's got a lot of
Okay.
real
Okay.
Hollywood stars that are in it, and that one's supposed to be amazing. Like it could be the next great show on Apple TV Plus. We'll see.
All right.
Your Friends and Neighbors, starring John Hamm. The premise is something like he's
Yeah.
a guy who I think he loses his job, and so he turns to petty crime to pay the bills. But John Hamm, we all love John Hamm. He's going to be amazing. And
Yeah.
some other ones coming up, a sci-fi thing called Murderbots, and a comedy about golf from Owen Wilson called Stick. And so,
Yeah. That
you
sounds
know,
fun.
we don't know which of these are going to be hits, but
Yeah.
they are, we have come so far from the days, Brett, when Apple TV Plus first premiered and there were just 4 shows. I mean,
Uh-huh.
now
I
we
remember.
have, or basically 4 shows, a few more. So there's now so much stuff. And if you're new to Apple TV Plus, oh, you could just watch
Welcome
things
in.
for forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so
It's
much to do. Silo, The Gorge, that movie that they had recently announced that I
oh
talked about last
yeah.
week.
Haven't seen
Great
that yet.
stuff. So much good
Okay.
stuff.
Very good. Good. And then if it's like we can't get enough. Nobody can get enough of Severance. And tonight I haven't watched my last one. If am I correct? The lead Adam Scott, is that right? And Ben Stiller?
Hmm.
No, is that the actor? I keep forgetting. Oh, Mark
So
Scout
Ben
is
Still
the
The
character.
actor is Adam Scott.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Good.
although
Thank
Ben
you.
Stiller is known as an actor, he is not an
Yes.
actor on Severance. He's the director and the executive producer, and he's
But
the
they
one
do
that
a
really
podcast, right? They do a
they do.
podcast together. That's where
It's
I
a
was
great
getting. Okay.
podcast. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I haven't watched that. I mean, or I haven't started listening to that, even though I feel like I'm like, what am I missing here? Because it's the FOMO.
Uh,
But you linked to a great little video with Ben Stiller and not Adam Scott, but Eddie Q from Apple. Now, I just barely watched a few minutes of this. So I haven't seen the whole thing, but you said it was really fun to kind of get them talking about it because it's Ben Stiller from an actor and pretty much, arguably has the most successful show, on television, on entertainment right now. And then Eddie Q, an executive from Apple who oversees it. And one thing I did remember that Eddie Q mentioned in here, he's like, I look forward to watching the episode of Severance every Friday, even though he said, even though I do have access to all the shows. He's like, I could watch them all if I wanted to, but I still look forward to it every Friday.
yeah, he waits to watch it every week just so he could be part of the zeitgeist with all of us talking about the episode and
Right.
talking about the next one. This was at the South by Southwest conference in where is that, Austin, Texas, wherever it is.
Yes, right.
And
Yeah.
it was about a week or two ago. And so Ben and Eddie Q got on stage, and it's like they both sort of interview each other. One asks the other question.
Okay.
Eddie Q asked Ben Stiller questions about the show, behind the scenes, how they did the actors, how they did the music, and everything else. And Ben Stiller also
Fun.
asked questions to Eddie Q about things like, how do you the same thing we just talked about. I mean, the what used to be the HBO-ness, the just focusing on quality versus quantity. And he talks a little bit about how does Eddie and his team, decide what shows to make and pick the ones so that they don't have a lot,
Right.
but they're just the good ones. And so I thought it was an interesting conversation. It's one of those, sometimes you'll sit down and watch a YouTube video and you're like, I'm just going to watch a minute or two. And the next thing you know, you've watched the entire thing. I forget, it was like 20 minutes or something like that. And
It's like
so
14,
I thought it was,
yeah. No,
yeah,
it's 42 minutes. Oh my goodness.
42
That's
minutes.
very long.
I
Yeah.
watched it on like double speed or something like that to speed it up a little
Sure.
bit, but I did watch the whole thing and I thought it was fun. So anyway, if you enjoy watching Severance, or even just Apple TV in general, I think it's worth watching this video.
Good stuff. In the know. We
In the
talked
know.
about Apple Notes a little bit, so I thought I would throw in a quick little tip, which again, these things I take for granted, but then I show them to like my wife or a friend or something, Jeff, and they're like, I didn't know you could do that. One of the things that I started doing a while back when the Notes app on my iPhone first started allowing this is I would simply pin the notes, P-I-N, pin the notes, as in like, I've got so many notes. And I do know this. Most people that I talk to, Jeff, they will use the Notes app, even my kids, to just capture all kinds of random thoughts and lists and everything, because it is so easy to jump in and do it. Plus, it synchronizes with your iPad and your Mac. And so it's just a great place to capture something quickly without even having to think about it. Well, I have been doing that for a long time. So I think I'm up to like 800 and something notes in my iCloud notes, right, where they're stored. Well, there are times when I want to find something. The search capability is great, but there are things that I want to quickly access that maybe I haven't, I want to add, for example, like a list of wines, right? I got a new wine, I want to add it. Well, I don't want to search through all my notes to find my wine list. I could, but I just instead will pin that wine list note to the top of that list, if that makes sense, so that when I go into my notes, either on my iPad or my Mac, or most frequently on my iPhone, then at the very top of the list of my notes is the ones that I have pinned. It really says the pinned notes at the very top. And I would just do that. It's very easy to do that. You can either swipe, I think it's to the right. So if you swipe to the right, you'll see a little thumbtack and you can pin it that way. Or if you go into a note, I think if you tap the three dots in the top right corner, you can hit pin as well, and that will pin it. The only issue I found with this is I like this so much that I've just pinned so many notes to the top of my list that I have to go through and scroll through. I mean, it's like several pages long now that I've got all my pinned notes. I've got to go through and clean those out. But I do have several that I always keep at the very top when I want to get it. But it's very easy to pin and unpin the note when you don't need it. So that's my little tip in Apple Notes. Use the pin notes feature. And again, it synchronizes all of that across your other devices so that when you want to pick it up and go and look at it, or even if you go to iCloud.com and log in that way, you can see those pinned notes at the very top.
Yeah, I use that feature extensively. One of them that I use as a lawyer is every different matter that I work on has a number associated with it. It's like the client number dash the matter number. And I often need to know those numbers for, doing my time entry or doing something else. And so I just have sort of a pin note that's got just the matter name. The Smith versus Jones case is 123-112 or whatever it is. And it's just a quick and easy way to look at it. And I use it all the time. But I use it for other things too. I only have, I think, 4 or 5 pin notes, but I use it extensively. This idea of pinning, though, is so useful. You can also do pinning in the Messages app. And so, like, if there are people that you message with all the time, I think I've got 9 of them that I have pinned. It can either be a single person or it can be a group. So, like, I have a group of my 2 kids because sometimes I will frequently want to send them a message. And so I just have a pinned group at the top of Messages of my kids, and I can just tap that and send them a message. Even if it's been a couple of weeks since I last used it, it's always right there available to me. You're one of my pinned people, Brett. My wife is one of my pinned people. So very, very useful. Excellent. So I like that. That's a great tip. I love it in Notes. I love it in Messages. Pinning things is awesome. My tip of the week is sometimes I find it helpful to listen to something in the background while I am working. It's got to be something without words, because if it has words, I find myself singing and I can't sing and
it's not Metallica.
Right to breathe in the I guess you could use Metallica. I don't. I usually find something soothing. Sometimes it is classical music. I love this is what I use, the Apple Music Classical, which is an app they came out with a couple years ago. I use that sometimes because I'll just throw on some, whatever, Bach, Beethoven. I don't even know what it is, but it's just something in the background. Sometimes I use movie what do you call it?
Like soundtracks.
Soundtracks, exactly. Yeah. Or like there's some albums like, John Williams hits. Sometimes that's actually too good because I know the John Williams stuff too much. But I sometimes find that if I have something that I'm listening to on my iPods, it just sort of helps me focus to sort of like drown out the background. So, and perhaps some of you know this as well. So, and there are many people that do this, so much so that if you look on YouTube, there are people that have created all of these videos that are like hours long that you can just listen to, background music with no words.
Music to study by, music to work by. Those kind of,
So in that genre, they actually did this a few weeks ago, but I just heard about it this week on the MacBreak Weekly podcast, that the show Severance, which we were just talking about, Severance has really, really good music. The person that created the music, his name is Theodore Shapiro. He has won Emmys for the music he did for season 1. So for season 2, he took all the music for season 2, and Theodore Shapiro gave it to this band that I was not familiar with called ODESZA. It's these 2 artists out of Washington State, Harrison Mills and Clayton Knight, and they do electronic music. And so he gave them all of the soundtracks for season 2, and then they created this 25-minute long music mix of the songs. Okay. And then what they did is they looped it. So it just, it's music, electronic music goes over and over again. And they created it an 8-hour soundtrack. Now, why 8 hours? Because 8 hours is how long the workday is. And so the idea is that you could turn on this soundtrack in the beginning of your workday, and then you could just listen to it throughout your summer. So it's funny enough that they have, and the music in Severance is great. It's, a big part of the reason the show is so good is because the background music is so good.
So good.
However, the thing that makes this perhaps not as, helpful for work is that in addition to listening to it, you're going to want to watch it, because this YouTube video...
they put the music.
It's got all of these scenes. It's not really scenes of people talking. It's just like scenes of the characters working. It's like all of the B footage from the show. Sometimes it shows the Severance computers. Sometimes it shows something about the hallways of Lumen. But like whenever I started listening to this, I would want to just sit there and stare at the video and just watch it. And that's not conducive to getting work done. So if you are using this for your workday, as tempting as it is to watch it, because it is fun to watch, put it in the background so that you can't see it. Just listen to the music and then get your work done. So I think it's really fun that Apple put this together, and so it's a great idea. So if you enjoy listening to music while you work, check out the Severance Music to Refine To, featuring ODESZA. Refining, music, of course, is what they do in the severed floor of Lumen. The characters refine. Yeah, and we don't know what it is they're refining. That's the mystery of the show. What does this mean? Well, I don't know what it means. Will we find out in the next 2 weeks?
Jeff.
Or maybe we'll find out next season.
Right.
I don't know.
I don't want to wait till next season. I'm like, we've got 2 more episodes in this season. And I'm like, you better give us something to work on here, because there's so many mysteries, so many open questions. I'm going to get a little mad if we don't have some kind of a resolution, but I'll keep watching. They've got me, so it doesn't matter what I say. They got me. That's so fun. This is great. I'm going to put this on today, but like you said, I'm going to put the tab behind something else so that I don't start watching it. Music to refine to. Beautiful stuff. Well, folks, thanks again for listening as always. Go check out techshow.com. That if you have any thoughts of maybe being in Chicago the week on Friday, April 4th, we'd love to say hello to you and talk with you. Jeff and I always have a fun time at the Tech Show. That's pretty much where we started talking together and meeting and becoming friends. So we would love to be able to see you. So go to techshow.com and find out a little bit more about that. And always let us know if you got any questions, anything that we can help with. Always happy to talk. Thanks, Jeff, as always, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.